In this video, we're going to show an application here, which is to take this Subaru block and fill in the water jackets with a machined insert. So it's kind of a two-step process. First, you go through and you machine these water jackets to an exact dimension, and then you create the exact opposite, just like an insert that we're then tapping in there. So there's probably an interference that might heat up the block a little bit and cool off the insert, and then bang them in there. And so we're going to kind of show a few different techniques that can help with that. Now this is not going to be a step-by-step procedure because different customers are going to want to do this in different ways. Like some customers may have like a CAD model, and other customers don't have anything other than a machine and a probe. So you can probe these water jackets is one way to do it. And then another way we'll probably focus on for this video mostly is to actually program the geometry of these water jackets. So before we talk about how to program the 2D geometry, let's show one common way that's probably easier to do if you have a machine and a probe, but may not be as flexible. And that is to probe, basically put the tool inside of one of the water jackets and just tell it to probe on the XY plane, and it'll just go around and collect points along there. So that works. So basically what we do is we insert the instruction called probe profile, and then we select the probe that we're going to use. We'll just select that one. And let's just open this up here. Okay, and it's all coming back to me now. So what we have to do is come over here to the 3D CAD and make a sketch. Okay, so our 2D sketch defaults to the XY plane, so we can leave that alone actually. We could position this in some other location if we wanted to, but the standard XY plane is okay for now. And then we come over here to our point consumer, click on that, and then we are going to put this into a 3D CAD sketch. So we click on the 3D CAD, then we click on options, and then this will allow us to decide where we want to put it. We'll put it in that sketch 0, which is what we just created over there. Okay, so we hit OK there, then hit OK, and now you can see that the point consumer is sketch 0. So just to kind of briefly explain what point consumer is and all of that, you have a point producer and a point consumer. Clearly we're going to probe, so the probe is what's actually producing the points, and then what's going to consume the points is the sketch. So the probe, again, that's the producer, and we just have to tell it who is going to be the consumer. So if you think about it, this is kind of a nice way that you can connect any point producer with any point consumer, right? So the sketch doesn't know that the data is coming in from a probe. It could be coming in from any other source or any other producer. So I talk more about this in detail in other videos, so we'll leave it at that for now. And then after this, all we have to do is just move the probe into one of the water jackets, and then just tell it where that location is that we want to start, right? So probably our deck surface is going to be 0 and Z, so we don't want to change that. And then we can just change the XY around to wherever the center is of that water jacket. And then once we get that, we can just hit cycle start. And then every point that it probes, it will basically just go around the profile and probe 360 degrees around. And every point that is produced will then just go into the sketch, and it will actually probably insert it as a polyline, I believe. Right, so then you just have a continuous line that's just a series of points basically. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about another way to do it, which is actually to program this data directly. So let's come over here to 3D. Let's just go ahead and make a new sketch again. And let's just look at our picture here. What I would probably do is set up my XY0 in the center of the two cylinders, so that's the X direction, is the center of the two cylinders, and then the Y direction also in the center of the cylinders, okay? And the only reason I'm doing that is to make it easier to mirror things. Basically, the whole block is going to be mirrored over 0 in X and 0 in Y. You could, pick one of the dowel locations, which is probably better. We would probably do all this work at 0, 0 in the center, and then maybe move it to make our origin over top of one of the dowels. But that's a detail, it's just not that important. For now, we're just going to pick the center of the block to make it easy. So I'm just going to program some of this geometry. I'm not going to get anything exact because I do not have exact dimensions. I'm just going to kind of guess on some of this stuff. So we're going to make a circle. We'll come over here and just kind of drag to -4 in x and +4 in x, okay? And just make 2 circles. So that gives us 2 circles over here. So we'll go ahead and type in exact dimensions. We'll do 0 in y and something like that. And then we'll make the radius 3, I don't know, we'll pick 3.5, okay? And I know these blocks are all going to be metric these days, but I'm just going to do everything in inch for now, just because we're trying to explain the concept here. So now we'll make 2 more circles. We'll make one kind of down here like that, and one up here like that. And again, we're just going to make these mirror images of one another. So we'll do a 0 in x, okay, and we'll do -3.5 and +3.5. And the radius, we'll go ahead and make it 1/2 inch radius. Okay, so now we have something that hopefully kind of looks like our 2 cylinders and these 2 head bolt holes, okay? So we'll come over here and just name this sketch. Let's call it cylinders and head bolts, okay? And now we'll make another sketch, and that's going to be sketch 1 down here. Now we're going to say water jacket geometry. Okay? And so what I'm going to do is start off with the information from the previous sketch. And the way we do that is we will say project a curve to sketch plane. So essentially, oops, hang on one second here. Yeah, I had the wrong one selected, so I have to make sure that I select the one that we want to work in. Had I left this one selected, then we'd be still creating geometry in there. We want to definitely select our water jacket geometry. And we say project curve to sketch plane. And this is almost exclusively used when we're projecting 3D geometry to a 2D plane. So it defaults to only a 3D edge we're projecting, but here we're taking 2D geometry and using that. So we have to just make sure we click on the 2D entity option there. And then we're just going to select our geometry. Okay, and I know it's kind of weird because now we have essentially 2 copies of the same thing. Right, so if I turn off both of these, I have nothing on the screen obviously. If I turn on the cylinders, it's identically the same as the water jacket locations. But we're going to modify this a little bit for the water jacket. So we're going to come over here and just say a 2D offset. And we're going to offset all 4 of these. And so we'll do that. And let's just say that we're going to offset that a 1/4 of an inch, I guess. Let's go a little more. Let's go 300. So essentially what that's saying is, since this is going to be the geometry that we're going to create the water jackets with, that's how much thickness we're going to leave between the cylinder and the water jacket. Okay, so kind of imagine maybe 300 thousandths in there, something like that. Okay, so now we can just go ahead and start creating some geometry here, some more geometry. So maybe I just kind of jumped ahead here. I want to explain that we're just going to program this center water jacket to start off with here. So if we kind of look at where this starts over here, it's just a little bit to the right from the center of the cylinder in the X direction. And I know this is a little bit confusing. Our picture is oriented 90 degrees relative to our drawing, but yeah, so it's okay. So we're just going to come over here and say create a line and do something kind of like that, I guess. Okay, and I'm just kind of faking it. I'm just coming up with something that's sort of close. And we'll make another line over there. Okay, so that represents this, although that's kind of on an angle. That's okay for demonstration. Okay, so now we're going to, if you notice when I hover over top of a circle, it gets a point that's on that circle, and then if I click one line, you can see we're making a tangent line to that circle. So we're going to click on that and then click right over here. Okay, so that's good for now. Let's go ahead and insert a fillet. And the fillet, let's see here. Let's change our fillet radius to 1/2 inch and put a fillet in right there. Okay, so that's good. And let's make another fillet that is going to be smaller. This will be like a 1/4 inch fillet maybe. And just do that right there and right there. Okay, so that's good. So now let's do a trim. Let's trim out some of this geometry that we don't need. We'll leave this half for now. And actually we don't need this circle at all, so we'll just go ahead and get rid of that. Okay, so now I'm going to create what's called a construction line. And essentially this is just a line that's not really part of our geometry. It's used to help us create our geometry. So I'm just going to make a line that is at 0, 0, and x. And what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to trim our entire drawing to only keep what's on the left side. Okay, so we'll trim and just trim this away, all of this, and this whole, most of that circle there. Okay, so now we have something like that. And now we're done with our construction line, so we can just get rid of that. Okay, that looks good. So now we'll come over here and do a mirror operation. So we click on the mirror, and we'll just click on like that right there. And you see that mirrors it over. And there's an option inside of the mirror. Quite often you want to remove the original. In this case, we want to keep both sides. Okay. So there you go. That kind of looks like our water jacket. Okay. And let's turn back on our cylinders there. So yeah. And so now I'm just going to kind of jump ahead. We're not going to worry about these other locations. Actually, let's go ahead and do this top one because it's easy. We already have the geometry done. All we have to do is mirror it over. So let's do mirror again, and then just select any of these here. And in our second mirror operation, we're basically defining kind of a line that we're mirroring over. So we're going to change the x to be 1 in the end, something like that. Now it's a little bit confusing, but just imagine it actually draws that line there. You can see this is drawing a line from 0, 0 over to 1, 0, so in this direction in x. So that's our line that we're going to mirror over. So all of our geometry just gets mirrored over top of that line. And we'll probably improve this to make it a little bit easier to select that line that we're mirroring over. But for now, it's not that complicated. If you understand it, you can definitely use it. And then of course we don't want to remove the original again. Okay, so now we're going to kind of move this into the 3D world a little bit here. I'm not going to program any of the outside stuff here, like the details on the outside here, only because we just simply do not need that to make these inside inserts for this application. So I'm just going to make, on the cylinders and head bolts, I'm going to make a rectangle, 2-corner rectangle that just simply goes around the whole thing. That's going to represent the outside of our block. And we could fill that in, give it more details there, but we don't really have to. So then I'll come over here to our 3D area, and well, okay. So first off, we have a decision to make if we're going to just continue to work in 2D or if we're going to move into the 3D world. I just like to go into the 3D world. It just makes things, I don't know, easier, I guess. You can kind of visualize things better. So I'm going to do that. You could skip over this and just do everything in 2D. Okay. So let's go over here and just say extrude 2D sketch into 3D. We can click on the outside there, and now we get everything that was inside of our cylinders and head bolts. Yeah, so that looks good. So let's make that it's extrude a little bit bigger. Let's just go down 5 inches, say, something like that. And let's extrude out our water jackets. Now, if you notice, it didn't pick our water jackets to kind of leave those, removed from the block. That's just because it's in a separate sketch. Typically, you would just want to pick everything that's inside of the same sketch that you're extruding from. So we just have to explicitly tell it that we want to extrude these water jackets out. So we'll just click on that and then click on this. Okay. And now the second extrude here defaults to new, so we're going to want to change that to subtract. And yeah, that's kind of cool. See, this doesn't go down all the way, so we can decide how far down we want to go with it. So I don't know that really matters, but we'll leave it at 2 inches there. Okay, so that looks good. So let's do this. Let's organize this a little bit more. Let's do add new part folder. Okay, so we're gonna come over here and say that this is the block, and we're gonna take these two extrudes and move them inside of our block folder. Move into folder. Then we can just turn on and off our 3D there. Okay, and let's make another one here, and we're gonna say this is going to be our inserts. Okay, and then in our inserts, we're going to again do another extrude and select this and this. Okay. So now we have our inserts in one of our folders here, and our block in the other one. So now we can actually just make these, you know. You know, for the inserts, we actually might not even want to display two of them. We might just want to display one, because we really only have to make only program this one time. And then because it's all mirror imaged, we can just you know, use that same program to cut this one out down here. Okay, so I would say that we pretty much have all of our geometry done. We can move on to making a toolpath and then cut this. And before I move on, what I'm going to do is make sure we save this. Always want to save. Subaru. Okay. So now that our geometry is programmed, we have our 3D models. Let's go ahead and make some toolpaths. So now we're going to move over to the right side to make our toolpath. The left side of our screen is where our geometry and CAD work is all done. Then the right side is where we make our toolpaths. So let's insert a pocket instruction, and then we'll pick this 3/8 tool right there. Okay, so we open our pocket instruction up, and then under Change to Machine, we just click on that. And then we'll pick this bottom face right here and this bottom face right here. And let's just go ahead and compile and see what we get. Yeah, so we've got a lot of toolpaths here. So let's look at some of our default values here. Our max step out of 10 thou is crazy. So we'll make this 150 thou. And then our max step down in Z, instead of 100 thou, we'll make it 1 inch. Now let's see what we get now. That's more reasonable. Okay, so yep, that looks good. So let's come over here to our toolpath simulation and just watch it go around, and that all looks good. Okay, so that's good. Now one thing we might want to look at if we're having problems cutting is the type of pocket, the pocket pattern. Changing to constant tool engagement can help in a lot of cases. It's just kind of the industry standard way to cut these days, and it just makes kind of a strange toolpath, honestly, but it really helps with a lot of the details of machining. Okay, so that's good. So we basically just, you know, push cycle start and it would cut. So let's go ahead and comment that out. And we can turn off our block and turn on our insert. Now, the insert's a little bit different because we're working from the outside in instead of from the inside out, because we're leaving the insert here. So if we look at our stock workpiece, if we turn that on, we can see that it has selected a stock workpiece that's around everything, including our block. So we could have gotten around that by making our water jackets in a completely different CAD drawing. I won't go into details of how you do that, but it's in the list of part programs over here. We can make a separate CAD drawing in the same file. But it's okay for right now because we don't really need the outside starting workpiece for anything other than the insert. So what we're going to do is create the starting workpiece that we're actually starting with, instead of letting it kind of auto size the starting workpiece. So we'll say create solid, and that's going to be in our inserts folder here. And let's just tell it we're starting off with, say, a 6" by 5". That doesn't look quite right. Let's do 8" here. Okay, and then our Z height, say that's going to be, I don't know, 1.5 inches. Let's change our color here so we can, yeah, there we go. So we can see the difference here. And then, so that's good, a good size, but it's in the wrong place. Okay, so we're going to want to come over here and say transform that and add an offset, and we're going to move that half of the distance in Y. Okay, and then, or sorry, half the distance in X, and then in Y we're going to do, say, 1 inch. Oh, no, not that much, maybe 1/4 inch actually. Yeah, and then in Z we'll just go down, say, -1 inch. Okay. So I guess that looks okay. Let's go down -1.25 actually. Okay, something like that. So now what we can do is right click on the solid block and say set as starting stock. Okay, then we can turn that off and we can see that our starting stock now uses that block that we just created. So now when we make toolpaths, it's going to use that starting stock instead. So let's do that. Do the pocket again. We'll make a pocket, and we're going to pick our 3/8 flat there. And notice it defaulted to all these, really small values again. What I'm going to do is, since we kind of have a template set up with this pocket, I can right click on it and say set all template properties for this tool. Okay, so that takes all the important values here and associates them with the same tool that we're going to use. So next time I create a pocket and use that tool, we don't have to go in and insert all those instructions again. Our 150 thousandths is now in there, and the Z step down as well. So now that's easier. We can click on change to machine, and now we're just going to machine down to that edge right there. And if I hit OK, this should start. Yep, this should start from the outside, from our starting stock, and work its way in. Okay, and let's simulate that real quick. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Hope that helps.